Alan,
Yes.
Alan.
I want you to give us your topic.
Okay. So this is a very broad topic, so I want to kind of keep it a little bit more focused. But generally, I want to talk about a little bit, briefly touch on the attacks that have been happening in Europe, especially like in Paris, or in France, and then also if you guys think that there is actually an increase in like terrorism in the world, or that it's just because we have the information so readily accessible that it's perceived like it's a lot worse than it actually is, or it's just always been this way. Because if you go and like look through some of just like a Wikipedia article, you've seen that this has pretty much been going on like almost yearly basis for like since long before the internet started. But there's like this crazy fear all the time that like like the Muslims are taking over, or like like the
World's going to hell.
Like, the Arab world or something.
But
So I just
statistically,
want to get your guys' perspectives on that side of it, and then just also kind of just reactions on what you think should be done and how you think Europe might change based on what's been going on over there. Because a lot of people are concerned that what's been happening in France is going to lead to a leader being put into power that's similar to somebody like a Donald Trump, who's just extremely ignorant because they just people are going to be so scared and
I have
so
a
terrified. They
question
just
for
want to
you.
they want to turn to somebody who just like is so radical and extreme that they end up in like a worse spot and end up having somebody more like dictatorish.
That's what I was hearing too. So I have a question for you. Was the person that performed that attack in Nice, was he labeling himself from ISIS? Was that being promoted that way through the media?
No,
right?
Apparently, like ISIS claimed responsibility, but it seems like because they have such strong social media presence, they always know when these things happen, and then they say they claim responsibility. I think just to kind of put their umbrella over everything, just kind of
I was going to
push
say
their own
too,
agenda.
because like a lot of stuff that I was researching and finding out about the attack is that the guy was completely non-religious, like in almost every way. Like if it was going to be done and he was the one that accomplished it, it was like because of hate in some way or anger in some way or another.
From what I understand, he
not so much a religious act.
He was super upset, and I think he was mentally unstable.
Yeah,
and I think that's really just drove him to that breaking point.
Cause the act.
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with ISIS. Even the Orlando shooting.
Yeah, the Orlando shooting guy, like he said, I came from ISIS, but really it just seemed like from kind of learning the background, he was a repressed, like homosexual man who was like grew up in a specific culture where that was like worse than anything possible, and he had to kind of get an outlet somewhere.
So I guess why I'm saying this is because then to me it kind of seems like stories get turned to push agendas. To me, so like,
absolutely.
I think that right now the use of terrorism being like in our faces so much is because of that reasoning, because of like looking to try to push agendas in certain directions, like whatever that be. But I think that that's why we're kind of, like you were saying, it's existed. It's always been around. But why is it be so much? Why is it since 2001, the Twin Towers event been like in our face every day, always? You know what I mean? Like
because they know that can sell something or that can push something or
so it exists. It's out there. Things are happening. So now everything's being labeled underneath the idea of terrorism, and the idea of terrorism can never be killed. Right, so it's just that never-ending enemy, villain, whatever you want to call it.
And it's just like vague cloud that you can kind of put over anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, you can call anything terrorism, and it will have that like visceral reaction that people have, and you'll get what you want out of it.
Yeah, you get like that mental image of like a guy in like a black mask with like an AK-47 like shooting everybody. But like then they're like, if it's like this white dude, that shoots up, Planned Parenthood, they don't call it terrorism. It's just a mentally unstable guy. So like whenever they put terrorism, you immediately see like a brown person doing stuff, not like a white dude doing stuff. It's so funny because like I was
stop pushing that agenda, and like Rachael said, and it's unfortunate that they use something so damaging as like people being afraid for their lives to kind of like sell a thing. But like being from Chicago, which is like basically the murder capital of the United States, everyone's like, oh my God, how do you live? And it's like I don't fear being killed every day of my life. Like the murders are all centralized in gang, like very high gang areas. That's where a lot of that comes from. But yet the idea that Chicago is in a state of terror is this like media thing that's like being
and it's a media thing that's exactly. It's like skewing the facts to make them work in their favor for whatever reason they need, right? And if it needs to be that it's the murder capital of whatever, then that's what they're going to push, and they're not going to tell you about all the other little things. It's a gang on gang. It's only located in this area. Anything else is not a problem, or whatever it be. It's like that is an issue. I think like it's not being addressed really either. Like not many people are. I mean, some people are getting upset about it, but it's not like it's. I don't know. It's not on the scale I think it should be, because a lot of us get our information about what happens around the world through the news. So if we're getting skewed information, then none of us are making good educated decisions, or even have the right to have an opinion on any of this, because it's like they're not getting the facts.
And I feel like a lot of the actual facts of the case, like, you know, this thing with Nice, France, or even the Orlando shooting or whatever, it's like to put it under that broad umbrella of terrorism, you're ignoring the actual like nuances of the issues and like what actually may be you know, the issues of the people, the individuals, and like what happened and what was their mental state and what was their issue and why did they do it. You just want to attribute it to this general idea of terrorism, and then when people hear terrorism, all they hear is Islam, Muslim, brown, and then that's just like furthering that hate, which is, I feel, is like that's the only agenda, because otherwise why not focus on these things as individual, you know, attacks? And if you find that 2 or 3 of them are related, great. Now that'll help you solve what's going on. But they don't even do that. They just, as soon as they hear an attack happens, it's like, oh, it's terrorism, lump it in with all the other terrorists.
Well, because it's like the news media outlets, it's like the first person to say something real quick is the guy that wins, especially if he gets it right. You know what I mean? Like, he could throw whatever bullshit he wants against the wall. If it sticks, he just won. You know what I mean? Like,
is that also our brain? Because our brain likes to compartmentalize things. I mean, that's just how it's wired, right? It wants to like distill things down to its simplest form. Is that just like subconsciously the thing that we like? Yes, it's easy to have clickbait in media and be like, oh, it's terrorism and it's ISIS. We're getting more views. But is it also just easy from a human standpoint to fall into that, be like, yeah, ISIS, that's all I see. I see it from the top level. It's really hard for me to go any deeper than that.
No, because I think it goes back to what we were discussing with my topic on the privilege and the feminism and whatever. It's like, yeah, it's easy for you to just take what works for you as being in the position that you're in. As like an American, you know, we're, you know, in a position of privilege over a lot of countries in the world. And so it's easy for us to just assume that everybody's an asshole in relation to us. Or, you know, as a white guy in the South and whatever, it's like you want to preserve your state of living. And so it's easy for you. It's easy. It'll always be easy for you to just attribute it to this other thing, this other person, or slap the label on it that has been slapped on it before because it's easy for you. And I think that it's done purposely. It's not done as just like this haphazard thing because people are lazy. These people aren't lazy. Like, this is a plan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this stuff's being done on purpose. So I don't think that it's necessarily that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
and I'm not trying to just like throw out like conspiracy theories or anything like this, but I'm just saying, like, who knows how this agenda helps assist that guy that we're talking about, right? Like that one that's like the Trump version. So if you're instilling fear through this and you're publicizing it in any way that you want to, obviously it's going to help that guy who's saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes to.
I'm going to come in and save you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's what he's. That's exactly
you're
what
creating a savior. And it's not really a situation that was
to have a savior, and so if you have to instill this like grand fear in people, and then come in and tell them, it's like a salesman, just like Hollywood. You have to give them a need in order to like let yourself
push them in that direction. Yeah.
Right, so you have to tell them how badly they need you before you could sell them your product, and so that's pretty much like what
it's like life insurance. You say, you know, everybody's going to die, but at some point, like, do you want your kids to pay for it, or do you want to pay for it? You instill the fear of who's going to pay for it. Somebody's going to pay for it, you know, and like same thing. You're going to push them in a direction, push them into a decision.
Alan, you're
and I bet you these kind of leaders are just like and they see like a new attack happen and they're just like, you know, like kind of almost celebrating because this is another time they can push their agenda. Like Donald Trump tweeted right after the Nice attack, he said, "Again, France is plunged into horror. Thoughts for the victims. The fight against Islamic fundamentalism must start."
Yeah.
Who said this?
Donald Trump tweeted this.
See, and he, oh man,
and I'm not looking at the actual tweet. This is just like a
paraphrasing,
a link to it, or just like a link from it. From his Twitter, but I guarantee you there's probably like hundreds of thousands of retweets and favorites on this tweet because people are just like, the mass hysteria is just like, oh my God, like, yes, and now we need this guy to lead us against.
I want it to be us, and he's like going to save us from it being us. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I saw Facebook posts of like, oh, I can't believe that sucks, blah, blah, blah. It has to stop. And in that context, it has to stop is I'm almost 100% positive that it has to do with radical Muslims. But when you
or just Muslims,
right? But when you look at the guy like has nothing to do with ISIS. He's just fucking mentally unstable because he lost his wife and his family, and he's fucking going nuts. So. Yeah, and Donald Trump doing the same thing is just another kind of point and evidence to what you guys are describing. People just making something a bigger thing to benefit them in the long run, right? They're just jumping on it so that they can show.
To keep themselves comfortable, to keep to push their agenda in some way. It's either to keep themselves comfortable or to get themselves in a position of power.
And it's once again that power that we're talking about. Like so many people are so addicted to it, and they're striving to make more and more of it, and make. They see themselves and there can be white individuals that are males that see themselves on a totally different pedestal than where we see ourselves. Like they see themselves here, and they think that that's to keep that going. They need to, make everybody believe their lie.
And that's why it's really important, like Rachel was saying, to identify the nuances and highlight them, like very, very importantly, because if you don't, you're actually just giving ISIS more power. That's what they want. They're creating an us versus them mentality. Everything you contribute to them is just making them feel like they're more in control, like they know what they're doing, and that they're being successful, right? But it's super important to not get it's also what media finally started doing. And like when there is a massacre, they don't necessarily will name that person, or when someone goes streaking, as another example, in a sports stadium, they cut away. They don't highlight that because that
don't give them the negative attention that they want.
Exactly, because more people will feel like, oh, I'll get on TV if I do this. And so by being responsible, which I think is a key word of like having the willpower to not take the time to like address the situation, think about it, and then be really methodical on how you approach it and present it, that will lead to a better kind of communication around the subject and less us versus them and less Donald Trumps in the world.
Yeah. And I think that's the main thing here in reference to what you were asking in general, Alan. It's all about personal responsibility and like social responsibility. Like on a personal level, each one of us has the responsibility to seek out this information on our own and make our own choices and thoughts, and then live out those positive, actual like real thoughts in life. Like don't use this as a reason to hate all, Muslims or followers of Islam, whatever. And, that's our personal responsibility. But then the media has its own responsibility, which it shits on a day-to-day basis to keep us informed of actual real facts. And instead, it's trying to push this agenda. And they don't realize that, like, if I'm trying to push my agenda on, let's say you, Alan, and get you to do something I want to do, okay, fine. Like, I'm hurting your feelings, and that sucks, and I'm getting you to do something. But, like, the media, you're controlling large numbers of people and controlling the way the entire world works, controlling the way the economy is going to function based on these decisions.
It's such a huge power to abuse.
Right. And so, like, there's no responsibility there. Like, no one's taking responsibility for it. And if you point a finger at someone, they're all like, no, I'm just part of a machine. I don't know. I don't have these things. But, like, every writer, every newscaster, every whatever, you guys all have responsibility, but, like, nobody wants.
So I'd argue that it's weird, but the social media gives power to a lot of individuals these days, and like every aunt, uncle, son, nephew has that same responsibility about what they choose to share and like link. And I personally got a little like heated, and like we said, as an educational moment, to be like, look, this is not right. When I see something like that, I'm like, you are friends with over 400 people. You are sharing something that I think is like systematically wrong, right? And I think it actually can do harm to people who are not as educated and will take that as influence and start believing in it. And so don't share that thing, and don't just click on it as soon as you see like one word that like resonates with you. Really take the time to think about it.
You have to be responsible for whatever you're putting out there, because you are responsible for that ripple effect that happens.
Exactly.
That's social media. I agree with that too. But like honestly, the large scale media is a big deal too. So like because a lot of them are getting their information from that source. You know what I mean? That Fox News or the CNN or the MSNBC, and talking about like responsibility for that, like taking responsibility for giving out, misrepresented facts. Like during the Black Lives Matter movement in Dallas, the shooting that occurred, the first shooter that was announced on the news was national news was
the wrong guy.
The wrong guy, right?
Yeah.
Right, the wrong guy. So now this guy's life is like he got that's completely irresponsible.
His
for
name
the
is rolling
outlets.
forever. Like,
exactly. So now he comes back to his social media and he's got hate comments. He's got "I'm gonna kill you" threats. He's got all this different stuff. And then you know what? The police office, the police department, and the news media outlet, nobody spoke out about that wrong information to clear his name. So he's just out there in the world doing his thing,
trying to defend himself.
Right. So, and then the other thing is this: did anything happen to that news media outlet? Did they get any fines? Did they get any?
I just want to say, okay, so yeah, that happened, and the media was not the ones to correct it. Every normal social media users identified who he was. Like, not only was his brother, trying to phone in and let people know, but other people, using evidence from other videos on the scene to be like, hey, it's not this guy. Look, he's right here, standing right here the entire time. Once that finally picked up traction, that's when the media outlets were like, oh, hey, this was not the right guy.
They didn't have a choice. Otherwise, they would
when it was called out.
Otherwise, they might have just put
let him go down with the ship. Yeah, they would.
Whatever you call it, the bullseye right on his back. You know what I mean?
And that's killed in that time frame.
That's not.
In
that's
Texas,
what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. So when we talk about self-responsibility for the information that they're releasing to the nation, we're talking about 330 million people or something plus now. That's a big power, and that influences a lot of people's minds on what's occurring and happening. If you're telling me that guy's the one that's killing everybody, the cops right now, you're telling me, and I'm gonna accept that as a fact, dude, somebody might shoot that dude.
Yeah.
He might die he's innocent for an error in the announcement of their information, and they're not getting there's no retaliation to them. There's no punishment for them.
And then the white guy that would have shot him would have been able to use that as a defense. I had the wrong information, and he wouldn't have even been punished for it. I guarantee you that. And so it's just this snowball effect going down a hill where when you start this thing, you have to start it with responsibility and truth. But they want to start it with emotion and trying to sway people and using it like it's a tool to, it's not fact-based. It's never fact-based. And I never know what to do, in terms of the news and what news outlets I can trust and what I can read, because it's
agree.
You have to read it knowing that
I have to cross-reference 1,000 times to actually think is it semi-real? Is this actually kind of real?
First of all, did this even happen? Are these people that are involved, and then all the little details that, fall into place as they find out about it days and months and years later. You still have to keep checking back and keep checking back. Because even stuff about 9/11 you have to keep checking back about now, because all the stuff, it's
I feel like
can't melt steel beams.
I feel like this should be a 6th grade class that you take.
No, I think it should probably will be in the future, is managing social, how to check social media outlets and everything like that. Because I don't know about you guys, but nowadays when I see some big national news event happening, I don't go to a news outlet or check anything like that. I look to social media stuff and see what people are doing, because there's always going to be videos, people on the ground level taking giving you the actual evidence right there that you can see for your own eyes, right?
Yeah, even before
there's Periscope, people will just start live streaming right from where something's happening,
Facebook
and you're
live.
You get there, you're right there, and you're okay, well, why are they saying this thing when I can clearly see it's something totally different on this end? Same thing with police officers in the body cams and people just filming that kind of stuff. It's just we're gonna have this evidence, so you need to be figuring out how you're gonna adapt your news reporting when people can call you out within a second.
I think that's the biggest wrench in the entire idea, in the entire scheme of things. Is the agenda doesn't get pushed so easily because it's so readily available for us nowadays to be able to get some of that information, because everybody's got a smartphone now and you can record, and if you're recording that situation while it's going down and it's being streamed to Facebook Live or Periscope or whatever it is, it's you're going to get better information from that than you would from any type of news media outlet. You know what I mean?
It's interesting, right? Because I feel like the more people who cut the cord are going to be almost liberated, which is a way too extreme word, but have a greater potential chance of not being influenced by that, by forcing them to go into social media to accept this, right?
Because you're actually getting the truth at that point, and you're not being fed whatever someone else is feeding you. And I feel that's a reason why maybe people of our generation could get hate on a little bit more by older people. Is they're well, why aren't you just more interested in taking what's being told to you? It's because we realize now that these things aren't true, and they don't get that because they grew up in a society where you went with what was told to you on TV and the news, and you knew that as fact. And even as a kid, I remember I used to watch things or hear things, even down to just stupid little, whatever things, you see it on TV and you think that applies to you and that's the truth and this is the way the world works. And when you get old enough to realize all of, that there's people out there who use these positions of power to like get what they want, then you realize like you have to question everything, and that's when personal responsibility comes into play, because you have to look it up yourself. You have to.
You have to do a ton of work on every single issue, every little tiny blurb.
It loops back to what you said first, Rachel. It was like checks on your checks. Like you have to do that for everything. Yeah,
yes.
It's crazy.
So talking about that, where we like allow things to become like a part of reality, like that weren't really existing. It was like the engagement ring, right? I wasn't informed about like where that even started, how it even happened.
Right.
So I
but you just did it because that's.
I just did it. Everybody did it. But then when you find out that it was like a marketing scheme that was it was started by DeBowers back in like 1920s or something like that, a jewelry company, and they like started saying that quote of you got to have 2 months or 3 months of paycheck to be equivalent for the ring, and they started promoting it through this marketing scheme, and then it became the norm, because before that there wasn't no engagement ring or any of this different thing.
No one questions it.
Hey, will you marry me or whatever? Now it's a part of reality. It does not question it. It is real.
That's the thing. You better do that thing, or you are failing at the thing.
What pisses me off,
not being like fact checked against each other, just allows to become a part of our life.
What gets me even more on top of that is when people are mad at you for not following that. A traditional marriage these days, people get so mad if you don't have a white dress, if you don't blah 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 blah, and it's like, whoa,
do you even know what any of that means?
Yeah, like why we even had it? Like,
doing it?
Who cares? And then they get so caught up in it, and it's insane. It's
I got in a whole conversation with a guy about like women and like shaving their body hair or whatever, and I'm like, do you know why women even started shaving? It's because Gillette wanted to sell more razors, and so they figured, let's start acting like women's body hair is gross and men don't like it, and so now you guys have to shave so we can sell you more fucking razors. Like that's all it is. And like with high heels, like they were created for men to begin with. And then women started wearing them as like a FU to men. And then the men were like, well, now we can't wear them because the women are wearing them. So now our heels have to be thicker and wider. And that's why men's dress shoes have heels on them. And they started making the women's thinner. And they weren't even a sexual thing until like a guy decided he wanted to photograph women only wearing heels as like a sexual revolution thing. Like, we are like men. Here we are standing in heels like men stand. And now it's become like a feminine thing. And it's like, it's not, it never was. It was all about like, and so it's all perspective.
Mind blown.
That's what I
But isn't that crazy how much that stuff stacks, and then when not checking, it just becomes a norm. You don't even know where the stuff comes from.
I think that shit's cool, because then you like trace it all back and you find out and you're like, what the fuck, I'm believing this shit? This is a part of my reality? Like,
But then you're liberated, because then you can actually have full control of making that decision. Right. Do you like heels? Because it's fine if you do. Just wear them because you believe in it. But don't do it just because you think that is like what you need to do. Like, make that decision because you honestly like it or want to do it, or it represents something to you, right? None of this is bad that you're doing it. Just like, I don't know. First of all, don't get mad at someone for not following what you believe in, right? Because whatever. And then second, maybe take the time to like really do it because you actually believe in it, not because you're told to. Crazy. Yeah. We went way off topic.
Yeah. But it
was So
naturally flowed.
The title for that episode will be like Terrorism, Social Media, and Other Things.
And Heels.
And heels. Yeah, actually, maybe it'll just be about heels, because that was mind-blowing.
People are like, man, when are they going to talk about heels?
Mind-blowing.
Alan.
Yes.
Alan.
I want you to give us your topic.
Okay. So this is a very broad topic, so I want to kind of keep it a little bit more focused. But generally, I want to talk about a little bit, briefly touch on the attacks that have been happening in Europe, especially like in Paris, or in France, and then also if you guys think that there is actually an increase in like terrorism in the world.
Is he labeling himself from ISIS? Was that being promoted that way through the media?
No,
right?
Apparently, like, ISIS claimed responsibility, but it seems like because they have such strong social media presence, they always know when these things happen, and then they say they claim responsibility. I think just to kind of put their umbrella over everything, just kind of
Yeah, I was going to
push
say
their own
too,
agenda.
yeah, because like a lot of stuff that I was researching and finding out about the attack is that the guy was completely non-religious, like in almost every way. Like if it was going to be done and he was the one that accomplished it, it was like because of hate in some way or anger in some way or another.
From what I understand, yeah, he
not so much a religious act.
He was super upset, and I think he was mentally unstable.
Yeah,
and I think that's really just drove him.
What you think should be done, and how you think Europe might change based on what's been going on over there, because a lot of people are concerned that what's been happening in France is going to lead to a leader being put into power that's similar to somebody like a Donald Trump, who's just extremely ignorant, because they just people are going to be so scared and terrified that they just want to they want to turn to somebody who just like is so radical and extreme that they end up in like a worse spot and end up having somebody more like dictatorish.
That's what I was hearing too. So I have a question for you. Was the person that performed that attack in Nice was
or that it's just because we have the information so readily accessible that it's perceived like it's a lot worse than it actually is, or it's just always been this way? Because if you go and like look through some of just like a Wikipedia article, you've seen that this has pretty much been going on like almost yearly basis for like since long before the internet started. But there's like this crazy fear all the time that like like the Muslims are taking over, or like the
world's going to hell,
like, the Arab world or something.
But
so I just want to get your guys' perspectives on that side of it, and then just also kind of just reactions on
to that breaking point.
Cause the act.
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with ISIS. Even the Orlando shooting.
Yeah, the Orlando shooting guy, like he said, I came from ISIS, but really it just seemed like from kind of learning the background, he was a repressed, like homosexual man who was like grew up in a specific culture where that was like worse than anything possible, and he had to kind of get an outlet somewhere.
So I guess why I'm saying this is because then to me it kind of seems like stories get turned to push agendas. To me, so like,
absolutely.
I think that right now the use of terrorism being like in our faces so much is because of that reasoning, because of like